a drag queen can be breathtakingly beautiful and, breathtakingly sexy, or a drag queen can also be none of those things and still insist that she is beautiful and sexy, and we're all going to believe it in this moment. And there's something quite powerful about that, I find. Hi, I'm Becca D'Bus, Singapore's biggest drag queen. I always had this awareness of, of drag shows. I don't remember us calling them drag shows at the time, but being interested in the form. Later on, I went to school in Boston, and after university, where I studied theater studies and marketing, I thought I wanted to be a performance artist. In this very self-serious, I want to be in a gallery and, do weird things with my body sense of that term. And then my first job out of college, I worked in a queer theater company. It's called the Theater Offensive. I directed a guerrilla street theater troupe that did work in safer sex education in public parks where men have sex. And a part of that was learning how to do safer sex education and outreach in clubs. And people didn't really want to talk to us that much. And so one night we thought we would go out in drag and see if that made us more effective. And it did. And I stuck to it. For me and my own understanding of the form, it's different for different people, obviously. The question is, how do you rationalize the fact that you're doing this thing that is, at its baseline, you're pretending to have a talent? What is there to get out of being in a room with somebody essentially living this fantasy? For me, it means, well, if we're gonna suspend the disbelief that I'm not actually singing this thing, or that I'm singing this thing, we can also then maybe put new meaning onto these songs by the fact that a drag queen has chosen to do this. We can completely recontextualize some of these songs, which is very often how I like to approach drag, or how I like to approach performance. And, we can engage in sharing space. We can engage in what is subversive about our queerness and our proximity to each other, about what is attractive, sexually or otherwise, about what is beautiful. And so drag moved online, that became this thing called digital drag that everybody was doing. And I did some of that, but I never found it particularly, I always found it a little bit ridiculous. Ridiculous is not a bad thing. I also found it really depressing. So the idea that, I would get that completely dressed up, that made up in my own flat alone, and performing for a camera with zero feedback from an audience or a return of energy from the audience was, first of all, exhausting, but also at some point it's this is my life. And something about that is deeply depressing. As performers, very often our entire raison d'etre is to gather people. So when it became possible to do live performance again that was socially distanced and all that, we started to think about what this new version of a drag show would be. And it was clear that we couldn't have as many people as we did then. 50 was the number that was being tossed around. And so I found a venue, the Projector, in a theater that seats 108, and we do 50 people in there, so we can space people out. It's a theater, so people aren't immediately drunk. I call the show Commotion because it's a riot, but smaller. I came of age in Boston, and I came of age because I worked in a queer activist theater company. So for me, there is not there's my every imagination of performing, of gathering people, of any of that stuff, of even being in a straight theater watching a play, is itself potentially political, and is this idea that people are going to gather around shared interests. It's like has a lot of, shall we say, potential to it. So that's the first thing. And I got to be around some really incredible thinkers and activists and doers when I lived in Boston, who were making some really interesting social change out of the work that they were doing. And so I don't think it's possible to be queer and a performer and a drag performer specifically and not be inherently political. Now, the question is how much you want to play with that consciously.